Welcome back, everybody. We had 1 week off last week while my family and I celebrated Memorial Day. So thank you for being understanding. I was torn, in my 3 years plus of doing lives, I've really only missed a few days. And on even those few days, I've had Izzy come in and record for me or take my place. But she just had a baby. So if you guys know Izzy, give her a big congratulations. Healthy Adam Wesley Olson in this world. So congratulations, Izzy and family. But she wasn't available, and I wasn't about to ask her to come sit in on me while she was already late of her due date. But regardless, I appreciate everybody who's understanding of that, because it really kind of eats at me, because when I commit to something, I take that pretty seriously. But that being said, we've got 2 weeks of a city council work session, as well as a city council regular meeting. And I was about to shortcut. I'll just be totally honest. I was about to shortcut not watching the city council regular meeting that was recorded 2 weeks ago, and just watching the city council work session. But there was some really great information on that, specifically around the Foothills Mall and kind of what some expectations are, things that are happening. Because, when you talk about 70 acres in the middle of Fort Collins that, is still used but totally underutilized, that's pretty important. As well as the Civic Assembly kind of results were the City Council work session, as well as the capital improvement tax and our economic health update. So pretty dense, but today, we, just like every week, we go through things that have happened over the last week, things that are happening, City Council works review, and we are going to just high level talk about a few of the developments under review. Now, if you're watching this live, feel free to comment at any time. I will try to get and watch those comments so that I can respond to you in real time. If you're watching this on a rerun, feel free to comment below, and I will get back to you as quick as I can. Now, tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we are going to go do our real estate market update like we do every month on the first Tuesday of every month. So if you're able to join, would love to see you there and ask as many questions as you can. But let's see here. A few things that have happening. Nicer nuisance changes may be afoot for neighborhoods polarizing short-term rentals, specifically in North Oldtown. There are 75 short-term licenses in Oldtown North, 68 of which are non-primary, meaning that's the only use of that space, which is pretty dramatic. Now, I will say that I had 3 short-term rental units at one point, and this was then when City of Fort Collins was going through City Council. It's actually one of my first introductions into City Council was when I was watching this, because it impacted me directly, and I was very upset about it, because they were saying, okay, we're only going to allow short-term rentals, non-primary, in commercial zones, but you can be grandfathered in. If not, you can be in, you can have primary short-term rentals in a lot of different zones. So it was pretty important. And essentially the only non-primary zones that you can go on are commercial zones for all intensive purposes, which there's not a ton of residential opportunities within those. So we don't have a lot of new short-term rental opportunities, unless like they're built to suit, which essentially is, building a hotel. So I could only imagine what these 68 individuals who are running a business, that's what they're doing. They're running a business. A short-term rental is a business. It is not passive by any means. That are like, people are considering and City Council is going to vote on this recommendation by June 17th, which could essentially restrict what these 68 people are doing with their properties. And some of those may be purchased purely for the investment sake of it. And maybe some people don't have any use for that property other than a Airbnb. So if you own property in that area and are an Airbnb owner, hopefully you're kind of keeping up to date with that. But if not, this could impact you pretty dramatically. As for me, having Airbnbs around me, I will say that how I got introduced to Airbnbs was from a I owned a downtown duplex, and one of the sides was rented out to a couple that had been there for a year or two. And a new couple moved into the neighboring unit, and the original couple sent me a text, said, "Hey, what's happening next door?" And I was like, "I don't know. What are you talking about?" I think they're running it as an Airbnb. And I was like, "No way. It's great. It's a young couple. They're awesome. I met them. They're great, blah, 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 blah." They're like, "No." And then the next month they sent me the listing that was on Airbnb of my duplex. And that's kind of how I got introduced to the whole Airbnb side of real estate, was kind of by like force. And long story short, we actually partnered with that person, and we said, "Hey, listen, let's do this together. You guys are successful. You should came to me. I'm entrepreneurial." But I will say that the dynamics between neighbors changed because, generally speaking, the neighbors are going to get to know each other. But when you have an Airbnb, you can never really get to know that neighbor. So I will say the dynamics of a, quote unquote, residential neighborhood change pretty dramatically when you've got a mix of short-term rentals and primary rentals, and primary homeowners, all that kind of different things. So I would say the characteristic of a neighborhood changes pretty dramatically with Airbnbs. Now, if it's a primary short-term rental, that's a little bit different, meaning you live there and you rent out a room or, an ADU in the back, and you still have that neighborly relation. So I think if they're going to make a change, I'm glad they're saying, "Hey, we're only X-naying non-primary rentals, not necessarily primary and non-primary." So interesting things happening in Oldtown North. So make sure you're paying attention because it could impact you or a neighbor. So let them know. School-age children in Larimer County can get free lunches this summer from the Larimer Food Bank around different locations in Larimer County throughout the summer, May 27th through August 13th. One thing that I talked to, there are a lot of families in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, that you just don't know the kids aren't getting a hot lunch. And fortunately, during the school year, that doesn't take place because they have hot lunch and breakfast available. I think they have 3 meals, if I remember right. And I've got a buddy who runs, I can't remember the exact name of the company, but essentially it's beef sticks, and he makes backpacks for kids that provide food and other things to help them along. Because, I will say, especially being a dad now, that I look at my kids and try to help them realize that, we are very fortunate, have a lot of blessings, and there are families out there that are going through some hard times and struggles. And that's a really hard conversation because, like, you don't want to know, you can't imagine, at least I have a hard time imagining young people who aren't getting the right nutrition and food, but they're out there all over the place. So pretty cool. Larimer County Food Bank, May 27th through August 13th, different locations throughout Fort Collins, and Loveland is also doing it, I believe. Fort Collins, LaPorte, and Wellington. It's a place to hang out. There's hot, cold, vegetarian meals, as well as kind of other activities as well. So, and then beef stick backpacks. My buddy who runs that beef stick backpacks is going to be available there too. So super cool deal. If you know a family or a person who's, struggling with that, make sure that they know so that, hey, you can go get a warm meal at least once a day, 5 days a week. I don't think it's going on weekends. Let's see here. All right. A new trail opened up, 1.8 mile trail, the Bayto Bay trail. So it takes you from South Bay to Inlet Bay at Horsetooth Reservoir. It's 1.8 miles, which brings our open space trail mileage up to over 100 miles. So that's pretty cool. Over 100 miles of trails in Larimer County open space, which is pretty darn cool. But that just opened up, I want to say May 23rd. Go check that out. Bikers and walkers and hikers, but no horses. I just released a YouTube video last week that was talking about my reaction video to the top 10, to the top best places to live in the United States. And, it definitely worth a watch. It's actually one of my better performing videos. So, but it just talks about kind of my reaction to, like, no qualms against whoever was on the top 10, top 50, top 100 list, just how they got those and the variation, between like the years past to this year's. I'm like, man, only like 5 of the top 250 cities were in the top 10 total. The other 5 of the top 10 from last year weren't even in the top 250. So it was wild. But there's always rankings all over the place, which, man, talk about an easy blog post to make, best places to retire or live, and you get to come up with the total criteria. I did the best neighborhoods in Fort Collins, and if you hadn't watched that video, essentially I had 4 criteria: appreciation, walkability, bikeability, schools, and value. And I weighted those differently and came up with a top list of neighborhoods in Fort Collins, which is totally subjective on what the ranking criteria was, how they were weighted. And now the actual numbers from those were objective. Those were solid data points, but how they were ranked. So, I mean, ultimately, that list, that top best places, I mean, I kind of dictated everything on that based off of, I didn't know who was going to win based off those dictations, but I chose that. And so it's always interesting seeing like top places, best places, and then, oh, well, we're choosing top places because, or of those places that have the best Thai food in the downtown area that's open past 9 o'clock. Now it's a little bit of extreme, but who's to say that I don't make that list? Anyways, let's see here. The top places to live or retire in Fort Collins came in at number 22, Colorado Springs at number 13, which is interesting because it was like they were listed among the 50 most affordable U.S. cities to retire. And I think I talked about that a little bit back a few episodes ago, but I was like, man, some of these numbers are just really, really whack. That was actually going to be my original video, but coincidentally, when I shot the video, it was May 20th, and I looked at I Googled U.S. News top place to live, and the brand new article had come out. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, it's not terrible. It's just crazy, I should say. And I've had a lot of Freudian slips in the video. I also had a Freudian slip, so I'm kind of like, oh, maybe like my true feelings are coming out. I don't know. But that being said, the video that I originally was going to do is just going to say like, hey, listen, like, at least the stats that they used were consistent about where they got them. But like, I've come across a few different resources that have like this one that says you need $1,700 a month to live comfortably in Fort Collins, assuming you don't have a mortgage or maybe assuming a couple of different things. And I was like, no, I just talked with my mom who, doesn't have a mortgage, no car payments. But I was like, I think comfortably $3,000 to $4,000 a month is probably what you should need and have to live comfortably in Fort Collins without a mortgage or a car payment. So that's my opinion. But we looked at it as far as utilities, HOA, gas, food, grocery, all that kind of stuff. And it's amazing how quickly it adds up. So one of the things that when you look at some of these lists is, a lot of the stats and numbers it's when you should go to, honestly, like whether it's a channel like mine or a local expert and ask, hey, I'm just trying to validate some of this information. Could you tell me, does it really cost $6 per gallon of gas? No, it's $3. Or, does it cost, $150 to go to Red Robin for, a couple? I mean, yeah, if you get absolutely hammered and have 6 drinks each, but the reality is no, it should be about like $40 to $60, depending on what you buy. So I think getting that kind of high level data and then verifying it with like a local resource and, kind of going from there. But regardless, other cities that were ranked in kind of livability rankings, Loveland, Aurora, Colorado Springs, among the 100 best cities to live. So Loveland getting some love out there as well. So pretty cool. Okay, jumping into, we had like I said, it was 5 hours worth of video. So I want to like dive in, get rocking and rolling, hit on the high points, and we'll get going. But so the first conversation was at the general meeting. It was a public hearing actually, and it was about the extending the Foothills Metro District extension. So essentially, I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see this. Let me get this full screen. Let me zoom in though real quick. There we go. Yeah, full screen, share screen. Let's get this over here. There we go. Hey, well, I've got you. What was the favorite thing that you did this Memorial Day weekend, this last Memorial Day weekend? Did you go to the pool, have a barbecue? We'll talk about fireworks here shortly because City of Fort Collins is cracking down on them. But tell me what you did. Just am interested. I didn't try. I cut down a tree on the Saturday before Memorial Day weekend while the chainsaw was charging. And, typical me, I thought it was going to take like 15 to 20 minutes, and like an hour later, and I don't know if you can see it, but like my callus got ripped off, and it was, a little bit longer than what I thought it was going to take. Okay. So City of Fort Collins had, there was a district formed in May 2013. Alberta Developers was the developer that bought it. It was $350 million as the development, but they were going to get $53 million in net proceeds to help fund this. And that goes through 2038. And what the new developers, which is McQuinney, who is local, at least local to Northern Colorado, they are the developers of Centera, lots of places in different, in Loveland. Now they're, I think, a national company. They do still a lot in Colorado, but they're much, much bigger than, they're not just this small operation by any means. But they want to extend this metro district until, I can't remember what they're wanting to extend it to, but it's like 2040 something, to help fund this redevelopment of the mall. I just thought this was really interesting. College Avenue shops, 90% leased. Those things are killing it. So those are like along College Avenue. You got Torchy's Taco, Lululemon, Crumble Cookie, Verizon. It's kind of a walkway of shops, but they absolutely crush. One of the developers from McQuinney that was talking about is like the sales numbers from those stores are like tops in the state for like Lululemon. Like the Lululemon shop just absolutely crushes right there. But the enclosed retail shops, occupancy is at 49%. It is a ghost town in that mall, and it's beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. I will say what you want about Alberta development. The mall is gorgeous. It's just not what today's shopper is looking for. And we've lost Macy's. Macy's was actually a mainstay there. They built on to Macy's. And I mean, when you walk through that, you're like, yikes. Like maybe they're not selling because it's disgusting in here. And it's not disgusting. It was just falling apart and it needed love renovation, but they probably knew they weren't renewing. They're heading out. So, but we don't have like a really an anchor tenant. Let's see here. McQuinney's bought this, I think, in 2021 for like pennies on the dollar. So Alberta Development bought it for X dollars. I don't know what the X dollars was, but then they put about $350 million into it. And McQuinney bought it out of foreclosure for like $50 million. So talk about an amazing deal. But and my first thought when they bought it, I was like, Jesus, talk about like just the cash flow. My head goes straight to like investment. I'm like, how can you make this just work? But they're like, no, it doesn't just work. At 50% occupancy, our holding costs and utilities and property taxes and insurance is too expensive. Like we have to make this work, which is essentially what they're going to try to do is right size the mall. So, the revenues aren't going to be sufficient by 2028. So they need to be adjusted to do that. They're requesting refunding and additional debt to facilitate a renewed attempt to redevelop and reposition the site. Okay, here's the initial discussions. Okay, which is so when McQuinney bought this, we actually had the vice president of McQuinney on our podcast, and we were excited about it. This was the conversation we had a couple years ago. Was again, they bought it for like $45 million. They want to right size it. The retail right size the retail by about 32%, which is the same thing that they're currently thinking about doing. But they thought 600 plus or minus residential units, a combination of for rent and for purchase. They're saying that the for rent product does not pencil right now. So the only property types they're going to be doing is for sale property types. And then 70,000 square feet of office space. And this was right after COVID. And everyone kind of was like, why are you doing office space? Like no one's going to use this. But, it's still, they're not saying that they're not going to do it anymore, but they didn't talk about it much. Their idea and hope for this space is, to kind of hit on the Fort Collins 15-minute community between live, so those 300 units that they're going to be building for sale, plus some affordable housing options, live, work, so some sort of office component, and play. They want this retail to be really where somebody, they use a measurement tool, and it was personal dwelling time or something along those lines, like an individual's dwelling time at this space. They've been able to ratchet it up, but they want to make sure that that's totally are much higher. So still going to have plenty of open space through it. They need to get this amendment in place for this to really work, because otherwise what could happen is the project doesn't work. They essentially, whether to try to lease it up or offload it. And I think one of the things that Mayor Jenny Arndt suggested, and I agree with, is like, why don't we work with the horse we have rather than the horse we don't know? And so let's extend this. There's no real risk to the city of Fort Collins besides this extension of the property tax increment financing and sales tax increment financing, which doesn't impact the city unless the overall benefit is increased property values and increased sales tax revenue, which then benefits city of Fort Collins and the developer. So her kind of thought was like, why not do this? Let's see if we can make this work and see if the McQuinneys can make this property, successful. So this is kind of the different revenues that they're thinking about doing, taking on additional debt, maximum debt authorization. Basically, they need more money and time to make this project work. And I can only imagine, I'm a small scale investor and I get nervous about things. I can only imagine. And I'm talking about like when, for me, investments and opportunities are between the scale of $500,000 to $2 million, not 50 million to 200 million. So it's the same game, just different numbers, but I don't like that risk. So these guys are hoping for a little bit extended timeline in that regard. Here is the, let's see here, what they're considering, right? So our property tax increment, any 100% of the 50 mils that is increased of the property tax based on, like, there's a base year, as well as the sales tax increment, where it's at 2.25% for the sales tax, and 100% of that goes to the mall, which is currently what it already is. It's just extending it out a fair while. The only reason I showed this is because this is when I'm seeing that they're expecting these major changes to take place by 2028. 2028 is going to be a huge year for the city of Fort Collins as far as projects basically coming online. I was just listening to the city council work session, and they were talking about the city Fort Collins Southeast Community Center is projected to open up early 2028. And then based off of what this is suggesting, like this might be, the first year where they start to lease up, and then this is starting to be stabilized rents in 2029. So open for business, maybe late 2027, early 2028. So we're 3 years out from this redevelopment of the mall, which is a long time, but, in the grand scheme of things, very short. So if this all gets passed. Now, they did postpone the vote on this a couple of weeks, but that's, not going to matter too much. I thought this was really interesting. So here's the revenues received by the Metro District between 2014 and 2024. I mean, like, not much, right? I mean, $41 million, but and then here's what they're forecasting to receive. Now, this is 13 years versus only 10 years, but regardless, like almost 4x the amount of revenue collected if this project becomes what they believe it is. So pretty significant. Now, obviously, revenues and forecasts are worth nothing. There's so many things that could change. Who knew that we were going to have crazy tariff discussions? Well, maybe a lot of people did, actually. I don't know. But, as far as crazy as the times that we're living in right now. So there's probably a lot of uncertainty for these revenues and forecasts and things of that nature. So these could very well change, relatively quickly. here's what the repurposed and reimagined is going to look like. So they're going to go from like 600,000 some odd square feet to plus or minus 444. Let's see here. 40,000 square feet of office, not 70,000 square feet. 300 plus or minus residential units and 11 acres of affordable town space. Now, here's kind of what the look like it's going to be is, let's see here. Cinemark, affordable housing. So this would actually probably be owned by the city of Fort Collins. Well, it would be owned by the city of Fort Collins. And there's going to be anywhere between like probably 30 to 50 affordable units. Don't know yet whether it's going to be for rent or purchase. Condominiums for purchase, and then townhomes and brownstones, again, for purchase. Right there. This is the Fort Collins Activity Center, FAC, Village Green. So this is probably the most successful part of the mall right now is this Village Green right here, where they've got Bad Daddies. We just were at Agave Underground. If you haven't been there, it's awesome. There's Smoke. And then I can't remember. Oh, there's X Golf right over here. So lots of pretty cool stuff. And then it looks like they're going to just cut this thing in half. Where this is all mall currently, but then they're going to have walk spaces, indoor, outdoor use, and then retail throughout. But again, much different than what it currently is. Again, just wanted to hit on the affordable side of things. Okay, and then the next thing that they talk. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, McQuinney's are local. I think they still live here. Kids are involved in Northern Colorado. So, it's just nice for me, like when somebody's in the area and is going to be benefiting from it or having to pay the consequences for it, that they live in the area. Alberta was a national development company and they didn't care. And it wasn't successful. And there was a lot of, time, energy, money that is going to be wasted. So it's exciting to see this could become something pretty darn cool. So hopefully that happens. All right. Now, two comments on our next section, vehicle noise in the city of Fort Collins. Okay. Coincidentally, I had a friend reach out about 2 weeks ago and he says, man, and they live on like Drake and College, Thunderbird neighborhood. He goes, there's been, motorcycles and, heavy, loud cars. It feels like it's not awesome. And maybe it was like a holiday weekend or something along those lines. But I was like, coincidentally, the city of Fort Collins is going through some changes right now so that they could hopefully make and implement some of these, muffler sounds, loud revving of engines. There used to be rolling coal in Fort Collins, but they're trying to cut that down so that it can be a more enjoyable environment for everybody. So this was their first reading on the vehicle noise, and there was 4 things that they went over. I'm not going to read it all, but essentially unreasonable traffic noise. So they kind of are going to update this to where it can be, it's going to be a dedicated ordinance. Loud stereos, ineffective mufflers, engine revving, similar concerns, which would unreasonably interfere with the enjoyment of life or property. Several factors, time of day, location, type of noise will be taken into consideration when an officer makes a determination as whether a noise is unreasonable. And then this would also allow officers to write tickets more efficiently using the same process other than the traffic violations. So there is this change where they're essentially changing how it is being structured so that it's going to be a traffic infraction and a potential misdemeanor so that you have to go in front of a judge versus like a little bit more severe. And, you have all of these different, recording requirements that you're going to have to do. So then we're going to identify what is unreasonable noise. They're going to specifically talk about mufflers. And then finally, the general penalties, traffic offense. So this allows, again, police officers to start making infractions more frequently and readily so that the people that are typical abusers of this can start to get slaps on the wrists or penalties and fines, and hopefully some of these practices slow down, if not stop. All right. So hopefully my buddy, and then the reason I said it was coincident, two things was because my buddy texted me about a couple weeks ago. And then today I was like driving back home, and I mean, we're at a stop sign and there's a truck next to me, and I drive a truck, and there was a truck next to me, and like, it was just like right on the green, just, and you're like, man, like, I mean, I did it when I was young. So I get it, but it's like, man, what's the reason? And like, it kind of startled me because I was just in my zone. So things like that could be, infractions. Now I will say it's going to be at the police officer's discretion. It's maybe going to be a behavioral shift that has to take time for people to stop. But overall, the city of Fort Collins wants to make sure that this, is an enjoyable place to go eat lunch outside or dinner at Rare without seeing or hearing, loud revving of engines. Parlaying into fireworks. Now we're coming up to July 4th. Now I would say this is really important, especially if you're in the city of Fort Collins. Now, I did learn if you're outside city limits, like fireworks are not, the shooting of fireworks is not illegal. The control of fireworks is illegal. There's a lot of different rules and regulations. Long story short, if you want to just play it safe, don't have fireworks. If you want to be a little risky, shoot your fireworks off outside city limits. And then if you want to be super risky, shoot your fireworks off within city limits. But know that there are rule changes that are taking place. It used to be that the officer would have to visually see the individual shooting off the firework. If he or she did not see that individual shooting off the firework, there could be no ticket given. Now, what is an option for the police officers, especially now between June 4th and September 4th, or August 4th, is if there is evidence of the fireworks being shot off, they can give an infraction to the property owner, saying, or the person who's putting on the party or area, whatever. They don't have to see it take place, which is a huge change, and could change. And like, I want to say the first infraction is like $1,000. So pretty significant. And then the second one could be even steeper. So, for me, I get $1,000 infraction. I'm probably never shooting off another firework in my life. But I guess if you get a second one, man, don't even want to know what that is. But know this: if you are throwing a party or having a party and somebody wants to shoot off fireworks, the rules are now that if that officer comes to your house and sees evidence of the fireworks being shot, you as the property owner could be cited. So pretty big changes specifically going to come into play this year in Fort Collins. So make sure that you're paying attention. All righty. That was it for the city council general meeting. Moving into our work session, it was really focused on three things: civic assembly recommendations, a quarter cent capital improvement, keep Fort Collins capital improvement, tax. And then the third one was how our economic health is doing, which all three were really pretty interesting. So high level, I wanted to just kind of show some of the demographics of Fort Collins because I thought it was interesting, because they wanted to have a random sampling of, there was 20 people who are a part of this civic assembly, and they wanted to have a population that resembles what the city of Fort Collins population is. So here is a breakdown of the district percent of population in each district. 16.7%. Maybe it looks like they break out districts based off the percentage. Interesting. I never knew that. Percent of all respondents. District 4, which is not my district, it's the Southwest District, had the most amount of responses from the 15,000 randomly selected houses, followed by District 5 and 6. So that's kind of midtown, but on the west side, and then downtown. So District 3 did not have, that's my district, many responses. So shame on you, District 3. But regardless, here is the age range of Fort Collins, 16 to 24, 25. We're a pretty heavily weighted population to our youth. And I will say, give it up for the 35 to 44-year-olds, 21.7%. So younger people getting more involved in the city of Fort Collins and how it's operated. So great job. Followed by 25 to 34-year-olds. I mean, this is impressive. I mean, maybe it's a result of a university community. I don't know. I'm just throwing out different ideas. But, our younger generation getting involved and responding to the call, so to speak, of opportunities. Now, these are small numbers, so don't get me wrong. But still, I thought it was really, that's really pretty awesome. And then followed by 45 to 54-year-olds, and then 55 to 64-year-olds, which you would kind of expect to be those most involved or committed from my perspective. And but yet our 35 to 44-year-olds came in number one. And but our biggest population is 16 to 24-year-olds in this grouping. Housing status, own versus rent. We're at 58% own, 42% rent population. And then 65% of owners responded versus only 33% of renters. And that's, an interesting dynamic, but you would have to imagine, people who are owning are more this is, again, just going off a script here, but people who own a house are more invested in the area long-term because, well, hey, I got a 30-year mortgage or I need to stay here for 5 years to pay off the, at least break even. And those that rent, they've got generally a year-long commitment, and maybe next year they move to San Antonio. So, or, to Denver or a different part of Fort Collins or Northern Colorado. So maybe aren't as invested in the long-term of what Fort Collins looks like. Just my opinions. Okay, some more demographics. Some schooling, no diploma, 5%. High school equivalent, 16%. We've got most of our population either has some college, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree or higher. We're a very educated community, and there we go. That kind of hints on 81% of those with a bachelor's degree are like definitely getting more involved. So pretty cool to see there. Here's our household income demographics. Our highest demographic is between $100,000 to $199,000, which is great because I generally have the opinion that Fort Collins is a lot more expensive than it used to be. And I think to be very, very comfortable in Fort Collins between, the two people should be, north of $100,000. And the closer you get to 150, probably the less stress you're going to have. So the majority of our population is between that 100 to 199, followed by $50,000 to $99,000. And the most involved are going to be the 100,000 to 199. Interesting. Okay, but I did want to, so high level, what the Civic Assembly did, there 20 individuals were coming with that matched this demographics over the 20 people. There was, people making $200,000, but there was also people who are unhoused at this Civic Assembly. There are people who have a college degree, and there are people who have a high school degree. So they definitely wanted to have a representative demographic so that everyone's voice is being heard. And between these 20 people, they came to a super majority vote, 89%, to have a multi-use aspect of this 165 acres, which was Hugh Stadium. They want to make sure that Indigenous people are at the table, have a say, can have some opinions, or, I don't know to what degree, but there's some of the components that they're considering: community gathering area, trails, natural areas, wildlife, rehab center, raptor program, possibly a mountain bike park. And the way they laid this out, there's lots of different uses. I don't have anything, unfortunately, to show kind of the different layouts, but they truly believe that with the size of this space, going to a one use would be kind of a sad use of it. That there's a very rare opportunity to have multi-use, and that's what they want to see. Okay, I think you can see this now, right? Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. I want to show the next part that we Let's go. There we go. This is our community capital sales tax quarter-cent renewal. This is not a new tax. We are at about 8.05% city sales tax. This quarter-cent sales tax is part of that. And it's up for renewal in I believe it's going to be on this year's ballot, 2025, but it begins in 2026 to 2035. It'll generate about $11 million a year in annual revenue, so $110 million over the next decade. Here's how the projects are allocated: active modes, river and environment, culture, parks and recreation, housing, transit, mobility, and safety. I'm going to kind of skip over this because there's kind of a better breakdown as we go on. All right, so arterial intersection improvement programs. So different major intersections getting pretty big improvements. And they've done this in Fort Collins over time, and it does change the dynamic pretty significantly. Bicycle infrastructure, $11 million. And this is kind of the under trail overpass area and opportunities for, so 2 on Power Trail and 1 on Linden Lake at the Poudre River Trail. Pedestrian sidewalk program, ADA compliant sidewalks, safe routes to school program. And then they're providing approximately 1.5 to 2 new miles of sidewalk per year. Transport bus replacement and stop enhancements. Now, it's interesting it'll be interesting to see, because they're doing kind of like a revised transportation study right now, and like seeing how should we change our public transportation, because it needs to change. And so it'll be interesting to see how kind of these things intertwine of like, okay, when this domino falls, it's going to be a tree diagram. When this domino falls, this is what happens. If this domino doesn't fall, then this is what happens. But regardless, 150 bus stops will need replacement and updated. Well, that would change pretty dramatically. 30 buses, including 8 articulated max buses, reach the end of their useful life in the next 10 years. So, and then one thing that they also talked about was governmental funding is definitely a consideration for them because of grants and programs and things of that nature that are kind of up in the air. Recreational paved trails. Paved trails cost approximately $1 million per linear mile to build. Crazy. Additional annual funding, but we're a big bike community. Paved trails is huge for us. We have a master trails plan that includes like an additional 71 miles over the next 20 years. So they definitely want to hit on that. Okay, here's the different programs. Affordable housing is getting some money. And that's one thing that the city council members were kind of like trying to figure out, how can we parlay more money into this, which is an interesting conversation because we have the land bank program. Even the housing catalyst is potentially a target buyer for the Foothills Mall to buy that 30,000 square foot of space there. So, but just a big intentionality behind trying to get more affordable housing in Fort Collins and Northern Colorado. Here's some parks and recreation programs. The Mulberry Pool pool replacement, $10 million. Outdoor pickleball courts, $4 million, possibly going to be at Fossil Creek Park. Dog park, $0 million. I'm sure there's some dollars going there. Community bike park. So there's a bike park feasibility. So it looks like Fort Collins is going to have a bike park at some time, some form or fashion. It's going to cost us about $5 million. It's just a matter of where that goes. Lee Martinez Farm renovation, downtown parks shop, which is a kind of the trolley building. Oh, maybe this is the trolley building. Excuse me. I'll keep going. Let's see here. Here are some projects that we did fund over the years: Lincoln Center, park upgrades, senior center, MOD. I don't know what MOD is. And then over the last 10 years, Carnegie Southeast Community Center, $14 million, Whitewater Park Gardens, Club Tico. And then here are some projects moving forward. Environment, river accessibility project, timberline recycling, construction waste diversion, and nature in the city. You can see over the years what has been spent and what we're expecting to spend. So spending a lot more monies on nature and environment. Here are a lot of the draft project package. So here's what we are expecting over the next 10 years. Here's what is funded from this. These are in millions: pedestrian sidewalks, arterial intersection, bicycle infrastructure, overpass, underpass, affordable housing, Mulberry Pool, Poudre River North, downtown park, historic trolley building renovation. It's interesting of what they're considering doing with that, because like they're like, well, what we could do is lots of different things. So there's no real specific use for that. Community bike park, pickleball, nature in the city, transport, recreation, paved trails, gardens on Spring Creek, Lee Martinez, Timberland Recycling Center. So there's your 102 of your $110 million. And I think they were also wanting to give a little bit of a buffer because of the cost of construction and the unknown aspect of that. Okay, I can stop sharing there. And then I got one last thing to share with you guys. All right. Economic health. Here is, okay, so economic health in Fort Collins. To have a healthy city, you got to have healthy businesses, healthy economies for people to live here, work here, all that good stuff. So it's always this delicate balance. But here are some of the priority factors for Fort Collins on the economy side. Expand business retention and expansion program to include attraction. Understand barriers to business to small business. A lot of this is like change of use stuff that is overwhelming and can be extremely expensive and burdensome for people to, let's say, change a coffee shop into a full-fledged restaurant. Well, that might not be economically feasible as it currently stands. So that was a big kind of focus for the city council members. Like, okay, that's great. You guys have got these priorities, but like, what have we done? Have we made it easier for somebody who is wanting to start a business to go through the process and it be really quick and easy for them? Or is it still like there's 18 different groups that you got to talk to with no one directing you on where to go? So develop a high-performing business research department to support the region with access to quality economic and market data for decision-making. I think that's awesome. Just absolutely love data. Sometimes you can make pretty decent decisions based off data, but still get nervous. Support and accelerate workforce training programs, reskilling and upskilling, including underserved and underrepresented communities to unlock new opportunities. That's great. And then finally, coordinate and leverage economic opportunities and innovation with institutional partners. Innovation, the Innosphere, amongst many other opportunities. Now, here is kind of an interesting thing. Like, there's actually, it's competing data, but regardless, this is also the city staff that's coming up with this. Population demographics, 170,000, 30.6, growing, but more slowly, aging and slowly more diverse. Workforce, 70% of labor participation, 67% of women. And then 59% of our workforce has advanced degrees. Number of 7,000 businesses in Fort Collins. I thought that was pretty cool. Average annual wage, $67,000. And then 96% of businesses are small, less than 50 employees. Crazy to me that 50 employees is small. Wild. And here's our top employers. Here are some of the concerns and curiosities of the city of Fort Collins for our economy. Softening sales tax. The economy is softer. People aren't spending as much money. Our city runs on city sales tax. Federal policies. We are a heavy, we've got a lot of federal employees here. We've got CSU that has tons of grant money. So concerned about some of that. Business owner mental health and burnout. I mean, man, it's you kind of look at it. There was a funny Instagram meme that I sent to a few of my buddies, and it said, I can't wait to use this on my kid. And it was, I spent 2 years of my life surviving a global pandemic and inside for 2 years. You can spend one night and be just fine in your room. And I thought that was pretty funny. But, you kind of look at it. And for me, I was in college during the Great Recession. And then we had, obviously, a few other things that have kind of happened in that time. We've got also the Great Recession. We've got the pandemic. We've got a lot of different things that we've already gone through in our lives. And as a small business owner, especially when I was working and operating downtown, sometimes they've got to deal with a lot of challenges, like, Linden Street getting torn up and being turned into like an alley, or not alley, a walk vehicle, transitionary opportunity. But you're trying to navigate how to operate business there. And then you're operating during COVID time periods, and the square got torn up and remodeled. And so, man, talk about, I could see how it would just be, stressful. I will say this, and like, hopefully if your dream is to start a retail, all the power to you. But me and Janae were walking downtown. I said, if you ever decide or want to start a retail business, I will talk to you about how quickly it's going to destroy your life. And I don't necessarily think that is fully true. I think my opinion, again, I've given my opinion a bunch on this weekly live, but if you're going to have a retail, it should be kind of supplemental to having an online presence as well. I will say a business that is a great example of this is like Tula. I mean, they do a great job, but they have a significant amount of business online, and then they also supplement that with a great physical presence. And I think if you're just going to be a physical presence, I mean, that's just really difficult. So, but hopefully, with online and the business ability to generate business online, you can kind of like subsidize that. So, regardless, business owner, mental health, and burnout. And then restaurant profit margins are at a record low. That's another thing that I was like, maybe a coffee shop or a liquor bar, or, a bar that serves liquor and has decent margins. But talk about, if you're running a burger joint, just tiny margins. Okay. Last part of our episode today. We're taking up the full hour. Hopefully you guys have got some enjoyment from this. No comments. You guys don't like to leave comments. That's okay. It's all right. Those that watch it on the reruns sometimes leave comments, but you don't give me anything to work with. So I'm just riffing. But regardless, let's see here. It's Downtown Fort Collins Art Week starting June 6th through June 15th. So downtown, put on by the Downtown Development Association. Lots of different opportunities to go through and see different art in public places, murals, museums. So you definitely want to go check that out downtown Fort Collins. Ollie's Ride for Change, June 7th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is over by CSU. There's going to be a bike parade, bike rodeo, bike decorating, Pokemon Go activities. And it's a second annual Ollie's Bike Parade. So should be cool. It's a lot of advocacy for safe riding to schools and on the streets and everything like that, especially with such a bike-centric community. If you are either new to the area or maybe you've got kids that are growing up, this might be a good opportunity for some education opportunity to go there and have fun, but also be educated. If you're not going to our local farmers markets downtown, as well as over by Ace Hardware, we went there this weekend, and just fun, got some ice cream. People are just always there, or people are there just having a good time, smiling, enjoying themselves. And we picked up some expensive as shit honey. So my wife loves the honey, and I will support her in that. All right. Otherwise, man, I'm excited about this. So I kind of came across this, and I'm going to mispronounce it, via Farada Ascent. So at the DU Mountain Campus, which is up as you're going up to Red Feathers Lake, from my house to the DU campus is probably 50 minutes tops. And I didn't know they did this. And I'm like, man, from our cabin, it's probably only 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. Now, unfortunately, our kids aren't old enough. You do have to be 13 years or older. But this goes, essentially what I'm seeing is every weekend and additional days through August. And it's $149 per person, but it's like a ropes course. And so go up into the mountains. Red Feather is absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't been up there, it's an entirely different new world, only an hour away from Fort Collins. But the DU Mountain campus, it's beautiful, easy to find. I think they just put up a brand new sign, but essentially every weekend, $149 per person. You do have to be 13 years or older to go there. But I was like, man, that's super cool. Especially, maybe I don't know, we bring friends and, they can go up there while we watch our kids or something. I don't know. So anyways, that's it on things to do. A final part of today is we haven't been going over too many developments under review, but I'm just watching it on a weekly basis. There are 3 conceptual reviews for ADUs in Fort Collins. So they are catching and picking up steam. I'm still seeing it mostly around downtown, but the ability to build ADUs now in Fort Collins as of February of this year is picking up steam, which could increase our housing supply for rent. or, mother-in-law suites, or potentially in those non-primary short-term rental zones could become that. No ADUs can become short-term rentals. Sorry. Cut that, break that. Wrong comments. So they do got to be for rent or studio space or something along those lines. But that is all I've got today. I appreciate you guys joining me on a Monday afternoon. I am going live tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to go over our real estate market update, generally about 20 to 30 minutes comparatively to the 60 minutes we go today. But as always, you guys are great. Hopefully this is great information for you guys to understand what's moving and shaking in Northern Colorado. Take care.